Welcome back to Bettrmma. This is going to be the UFC 300 picks and prediction video. If you would like to see a more in-depth review on Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill, Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage, Sadiq Youssef versus Diego Lopez, Renato Moicano versus Jalen Turner, Bobby Green versus Jim Miller, and Figueiredo versus Garbrandt, check out the videos on my channel. I'll put cards for those videos throughout the intro here, so check those out if you're interested in more in-depth breakdown. We are going to dive right into it with Deiveson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. Now, I think this is the absolute perfect way to start the card. Not only do we have two former champions as the first fight of the night, it's going to be between two blazing fast strikers between Figueiredo and Garbrandt. I do think that Figueiredo has the harder one-shot knockout power in this fight, and that, of course, is always the danger with Cody Garbrandt, is that if you just hit him on the button right, he's going to go to sleep. But as long as Cody Garbrandt is able to stay out of the way of Deiveson Figueiredo's jab and Figueiredo's leg kicks, staying on his bicycle, circling the fence, and hitting Figueiredo with combinations when Figueiredo comes in for big single shots with his strikes. My mind is telling me to go with Figueiredo, but my gut is telling me to go with Cody Garbrandt. A lot of people are underestimating Cody Garbrandt, and I think this is going to be the perfect way for us to start off the card with Cody Garbrandt getting a big upset over Deiveson Figueiredo. Moving on to Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. Jim Miller has been on a resurgence in his career. He's won 5-1 in his last 6 fights. He hasn't been beating any real seasoned UFC level competition other than Donald Cerrone and Gabriel Benitez. And to be fair, this was Cerrone at the very end of his career, and also Benitez is not nearly big enough to be fighting in the UFC lightweight division. As long as Bobby Green can keep this fight standing, he's going to be piecing up Jim Miller. And as I said in my prediction video, I think this is going to look a lot like the Nasrat Hack Press performance. I think Bobby Green is going to put on a boxing lesson against Jim Miller. He's going to be switching stances, pot-shotting him with jabs to the body in both stances, jabs up top, and throwing in his other weapons, stabbing him with a teep kick to the body every once in a while. And I think Bobby Green is going to get a 3-round decision here. Not to say that Jim Miller has got a weak chin, but he is human. So if Bobby Green is able to pepper him with enough shots throughout the first 2 rounds, we could even see Bobby Green getting a late finish here, but I'll go Bobby Green by 3-round decision. Moving on to Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. If you're new to the channel, we do not cover WMMA here. Respectfully, in the spirit of Bettrmma, this channel is dedicated to the better of the UFC and the MMA community, and it is only fair that with the rich talent pool that we have in the male divisions, it's only fair that the UFC creates a WMMA promotion if they wish to continue having WMMA fighters on their roster. We should have a high-level men's UFC fight here on UFC 300. That is the entertainment that the MMA fans deserve. All due respect to Jessica Andrade and Marina Rodriguez, I respect them as martial artists, but I do not respect them as cage fighter entertainment. We must always respect and put first the just bleed roots that we come from. And if you disagree with that, you're not a real MMA fan. If you think that we shouldn't bring back foot stomps and knees to the head like in Pride Rules, you're not a real MMA fan. Moving on to Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. Now, I'm dangerously afraid for Renato Moicano in this fight. Jalen Turner is very interesting. I'll bet any amount of money that Jalen Turner never becomes a UFC champion. But the thing about Jalen Turner is that he's been in the UFC for quite some time. He's fought and trained with a lot of experienced fighters. So along the way, he's picked up a full range of dangerous finishing moves, whether it be submissions or knockout strikes. Jalen Turner is a seriously dangerous guy, but I believe that Renato Moicano is more high level when it comes to the wrestling and the grappling. He is coming out here to win these fights, no matter whether it's entertaining or not. So if that's what Renato Moicano has to do here in this fight, that's what I think he'll do. Ironically enough, Renato Moicano is friends with Gilbert Burns, but this fight is very reminiscent of Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena. Renato is an extremely high-level grappler at the lightweight division, and he will make it his game plan to take Jalen Turner down in this fight. Do I think Jalen Turner can knock out Renato Moicano on the feet? 100%. But I'm going to say, I'm going to go with Renato Moicano by 3-round decision here. An absolutely stacked early prelims. Moving on to the prelims that start off with Sodiq Yusuff versus Diego Lopez. Now, I'm going with Diego Lopez in this fight. And my main reasoning is based off of watching Sodiq Yusuff versus Andre Fili. Now, if you watch that fight, Andre Fili was able to take Sodiq Yusuff down 3 times in the first round of their fight. And what I mean by this is perfectly timing a double leg shot, getting Sodiq Yusuff down to his butt, and then as Sodiq Yusuff is popping back up, getting back up to his feet, Andre Fili was able to get a back position and get behind Sodiq Yusuff every single time. Now, Andre Fili is not the sort of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ace like Diego Lopez, where he's going to immediately throw his hooks in or get a body triangle and become a backpack and start attacking your neck. But Diego Lopez will certainly take advantage of those opportunities. I'm looking for Diego Lopez to get a submission win here. I think he could possibly get it in the first round because Diego Lopez is such an aggressive finisher, and Sodiq Yusuff is the Jeff Neal of the featherweight division, meaning he is just coming out there to walk you down, hit you with a 1-2, and some crisp boxing combinations. So I think that forward movement from Sodiq Yusuff is going to be perfectly countered with some takedowns, and we're going to see Diego Lopez put on a big statement here, show why he's a top 15, and not just a top 15, a top 10 fighter in this UFC featherweight division. I honestly think if he can get the right matchups, he can very easily find himself within the top 5 within 12 months. Check out my breakdown of this fight that I did. Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. Like I said before, this is Bettrmma, and we try our best to refrain from covering WMMA, but I will bring it up anecdotally in terms of contextualizing how it is ruining the state of MMA today. I would have much rather have seen a high-level men's MMA fight. Moving on to Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. I feel like you just have to go with Aljamain Sterling in this matchup. Aljamain Sterling, of course, has a major grappling advantage. Calvin Kattar is just going to be in pure survival mode whenever this fight gets into the grappling exchanges or whenever it touches the ground. So it's hard not to pick Aljamain just off of that fact, because it's an MMA fight, so you expect there to be at least one round that could very likely be dominated by a grappling exchange when you have such a grappling dominant fighter like Aljamain Sterling. I know we just saw Aljamain Sterling just get knocked out by Sean O'Malley, but that is Sean O'Malley. And I don't think that Aljamain Sterling necessarily had the most A1 game plan or the most A1 IQ that night. Could Calvin Kattar just walk Aljamain Sterling down and box his head off? I would love to see that, but I think Aljamain Sterling is too funky on the feet. He's too hard to hit. He's too good at going into the grappling when you're trying to hit him. So I don't think Calvin Kattar is going to get that knockout punch, and I think Aljamain Sterling is going to get the win here. Moving on to the headliner of the prelims, Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. I would really hope that they make this a 5-round fight. I know that's really hard to do because of the scheduling conflicts that I'm sure they have, but this is a fight that certainly deserves to be 5 rounds. It's essentially a number 1 contenders fight for the light heavyweight championship. So out of the headliner of the prelims, we are going to get essentially a contender for the winner of the main event. So very interesting, nice way that the UFC structured this card. I'm going to go with Yuri Prochazka here. I find it strange that a lot of people are picking Alexander Rakic. I find it just very interesting because it's sort of like a reflection of where people's psyche and perspective is at in terms of certain MMA metas. Yuri Prochazka is essentially a light heavyweight expression of the Tony Ferguson spirit. And what that is that you'll have these cookie cutter fighters like Alexander Rakic who have wrestling based game plans and very orthodox, conventional kickboxing, striking techniques. Now, Alexander Rakic is high level, but I don't think that he is so high level in the wrestling that he's going to be able to ragdoll Prochazka, because as we saw in Prochazka's fight with Glover Teixeira, he does a very good job in scrambling in the grappling exchanges and of course being able to fight through the grappling. So I don't think Rakic has any sort of substantial advantage there, and I do not think that Alexander Rakic's kickboxing, though it is high level for UFC standards, I don't think it is so high level in terms of general kickboxing standards, which somebody like Alex Pereira is trained off of, to where Alexander Rakic, he's not going to be able to slip and counter the unorthodox entries and angles of Yuri Prochazka in the same methodical, mechanical fashion that somebody like Alex Pereira is able to. I think Alexander Rakic trains much more to be an offensive kickboxer and striker. So when he's going to be pressured by and put on his back foot by somebody like Yuri Prochazka, not only is this going to get Alexander Rakic shooting his takedowns out of desperation, but it's also going to nullify Alexander Rakic's striking, and it's essentially going to limit and nullify a lot of his game, and it's going to limit his roads to success, essentially to just counter hooks off of his back foot. That's the way I predict this fight going. He's going to be put on his back foot against Yuri, hit with these big shots from odd angles that Yuri throws, and Rakic is going to be shooting takedowns off of his back foot. But like Tony Ferguson, Yuri's game is predicated on drawing that out of you. So I predict that he's going to be expecting the takedown. He'll be able to handle it. And at the end of the day, don't forget, Yuri Prochazka submitted Glover Teixeira. As bloody as that fight got, it ended in a submission. So we could even see Yuri Prochazka ending this with an anaconda or a Darce choke. But I've got Yuri Prochazka ending this fight by a finish. It's about time that Yuri Prochazka gets his lick back and gets another W in the UFC. Moving on to the main card. This is probably one of, if not the most high-level fights on the card. A lot of people are complaining that Big Daddy Bo Nickel is opening the main card of UFC 300. Don't be a bunch of garden hose, is all I gotta say. Look, the guy has national, grassroots success and fame throughout the United States wrestling circuit. He's essentially an American homegrown Khamzat Chimaev. That's how high level his wrestling is, and I actually think he's a better striker than Khamzat Chimaev. And I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but I think he's going to be able to show it in his fight with Cody Brundage. Bo Nickel works with Coach Barry Robinson. His defensive footwork is far too good. The way Bo Nickel threatens and fakes the takedown, perfectly camouflages his punches. It creates a serious problem for all of his opponents. Once you get to middleweight, it only takes one shot. I wouldn't be as surprised if we get to see a Bo Nickel first round knockout here, or a Bo Nickel first round submission, because as we know, he is a very talented grappler as well. Outside of his wrestling, he does have a very mature submission game. So Bo Nickel is going to get the first round finish here. Now, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. In all seriousness, this is the main event of the evening for me. I love this fight so much, I feel like they need to give a belt out for it. I'm not a fan of the whole BMF belt thing. I'm not the biggest fan of interim belts, but in a weird way, when you have a fight like this between Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan has given Islam Makhachev his toughest fight in the UFC outside of Volkanovski, of course. And Charles Oliveira could very well still be the UFC lightweight champion. Who knows how another fight with him and Islam goes. Every fight in MMA looks different. So I feel like they should get a belt or a medal or something for whoever wins this fight. Because whoever wins this here is very much the number one contender and very well could be the best lightweight in the world, depending on the night. I do think a lot of people underestimate Arman Tsarukyan's striking. Out of all the people that Charles Oliveira has faced, for it to be Arman Tsarukyan to be the guy to crack that chin, that doesn't seem very realistic to me. As we know, Charles Oliveira is a pressure style fighter. He's going to walk Arman Tsarukyan down. He's going to throw flying knees, flying front kicks, extremely hard 1-2s, knees and elbows in the clinch when they get in tight. Now, I do think a lot of people are going to be surprised how good Arman Tsarukyan is going to do in the clinch. I think Charles Oliveira is going to be surprised by Arman Tsarukyan's trips and his wrestling when Charles Oliveira tries to get him in the Muay Thai clinch. And I also think that Arman Tsarukyan is going to have some success as the fight goes on when it comes to elbows in the clinch. As all Charles Oliveira fights are, this is going to be an absolute war. Arman Tsarukyan really does look like this unbeatable, young up-and-coming prospect. He's so good everywhere in the fight. But Charles Oliveira seems like the perfect guy to put an end to his hype train. Unfortunately, guys, I do feel like Arman Tsarukyan is going to be able to wear Charles Oliveira's storm here. As much as I want to believe that Charles Oliveira is still at the top of the lightweight division, I don't think he has the Cinderella story left in him where he's going to get back to that title shot and become UFC champion again. Maybe he gets another shot at the title, but I don't see Charles Oliveira being a two-time UFC lightweight champion. I think UFC 300 is going to be, as it should be, there are going to be some passing of the torch moments on this card, and I think this is going to be one of the biggest moments. Context aside, I do think that Charles Oliveira's shoot-a-box blitzkrieg style faces problems when he's going up against the more Russian technical styled fighters, where their entire fighting style is based off of sound technique, sound defense, controlling the fight where it goes, and then being able to defend against submissions. So as good as I still believe Charles Oliveira is, I do think that Arman Tsarukyan has the particular style, much like Islam Makhachev, that is built around weathering that sort of storm. As entertaining as a fight I think it's going to be, because Charles Oliveira is always in entertaining fights, I think Arman Tsarukyan is going to weather the storm here and get through with a 3-round decision. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. For me, the biggest question in this fight is how fast is Max Holloway going to be? Because I think if he carries the same sort of speed that he did at featherweight, I think we could see Max Holloway possibly put on one of his vintage performances. Now, that may be an extremely hot take. I don't think Max Holloway is going to make himself as hittable as Justin Gaethje's past opponents. Alexander Volkanovski talked about this in his breakdown video. Max Holloway's game has developed a lot since he first became champion. When he first became champion, he was much more in front of you, and now he's decided to base his game much more off of angles, changing levels, misdirections, throwing a variety of techniques to essentially win the fight in a very holistic way. Will Justin Gaethje land big shots on Max Holloway in this fight? Of course, it's a Justin Gaethje fight. Is an elephant heavy? I'm going to confidently take Max Holloway in this fight. You know, a lot of people are saying, but Justin Gaethje's leg kicks. Max Holloway is known for having the best movement in his division in terms of getting in and out of range. Max Holloway is also very good at using the oblique kick. So I think he's going to fight Justin Gaethje at a range that Justin Gaethje is very unfamiliar at fighting at. Is this pick and the way that I'm going about making this pick possibly a cope for me to block out the image of Max Holloway possibly getting treated like Tony Ferguson in this fight? Maybe. But cope as it may be, I'm going with Max Holloway by a dominant 5-round decision. Weili Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan. I actually think that putting this right before the main event is like a perfect way to give everybody a little break before the main event. And for us all to talk to our friends like, I can't believe this happened already on the card. I can't believe that happened. Of course, this is a WMMA fight. I could care less who wins it. Moving on to the main event. Alex Pereira, the light heavyweight champion, going up against the former light heavyweight champion, Jamal Hill. Alex Pereira beat Yuri Prochazka to gain the light heavyweight title in what I would say was a premature stoppage. The biggest story for this fight is going to be the durability of Alex Pereira. Now, of course, Alex Pereira has the touch of death, but we're essentially looking at a Chuck Liddell situation. Does Alex Pereira have the shot that can knock anyone out? Yes, but is it his time for his chin to go out? Personally, I think Jamal Hill is the aggressive, boxing-heavy, unorthodox striker to really put a volume and pace on Alex Pereira that can hit him with some crazy shots. If Yuri Prochazka is too abstract and too unorthodox, Jamal Hill meets Pereira at the perfect balance between orthodox, conventional kickboxing exchanges and intense MMA boxing. Because as we know, it is not the same defending yourself in the boxing exchanges in kickboxing as it is in MMA because of the glove size difference. So as much as I like Alex Pereira, UFC 300 is going to be marked by the UFC entering into the new era. Jamal Hill, the first fighter to ever come off of the Dana White's Contender Series, which is essentially the new age and the reformation of the Ultimate Fighter, which of course catapulted us to even get to UFC 100, 200, and 300. It's only fitting that Jamal Hill, who honorably stepped down and vacated the belt after injury, rightfully reclaims his belt and reclaims his throne at the top of the light heavyweight division. And I think Jamal Hill is going to get it here by a spectacular knockout. Thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the video. I appreciate everybody who's been supporting Better MMA in our quest to become the best MMA ASMR on MMA YouTube, giving you the most based, real takes, not wasting your time. Comment down below your thoughts on my fight picks. What fight picks do you disagree with? Which ones do you agree with? Let me know down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We don't waste your time with WMMA. We don't waste your time with TMZ MMA news. You guys have a good one. Peace.